Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Investment and Real Estate Committee of Waterfront Toronto. I've been advised that quorum is present, so it's appropriate for us to proceed. Firstly, I'd like to welcome everyone who's joining our meeting today, and I would remind you that this session of today's meeting is being recorded. I'd like to add that it's my pleasure to oversee this meeting. I've been a member of IREC for just about 2 years, and this marks my first meeting as committee chair. So I'm very happy to be here. Waterfront has a number of transformative city building projects before it, and I look forward to working with everyone to advance them and to serve the best interests of Waterfront Toronto. I also want to congratulate our fellow committee member, Andrew McLeod, on his recent reappointment to our board. So thank you, Andrew, for your continued support and guidance and your participation on this committee. Okay, before we get to the business of the meeting, it is our custom to commence with the land acknowledgement. Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that the land upon which we are undertaking our revitalization efforts is part of the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. In addition, Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that Toronto has historically been a gathering place for many Indigenous people, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples today. We'll flip into the agenda. The first item of business is the approval of the meeting agenda. Andrew, if I could ask you to propose the motion. Thank you. And I will second. Any discussion?
No.
I'm here.
Leslie's on the call now.
Yeah, I'm here now. Happy to
Perfect.
Second or first or whatever you need.
Thank you. All right. We'll record Leslie a seconder. She's jumped in the nick of time. Any discussion on the meeting agenda? Okay, hearing none. Next, we'll ask if there are any conflicts of interest to declare. Okay. Hearing none, we can move on to the business of the meeting. So thank you, everybody. Next is the consent agenda. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the open session of the November 16th, 2023 meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the open session minutes?
Happy to move.
Thanks,
yes.
Andrew. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Perfect. Okay, moving on to the work plan. As part of the mandate of the committee, we set a work plan for the coming year. So the materials are in your book, and I'd like to call upon Ian Ness to speak to this matter.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Meg is here as well if there's any questions. But in your materials, you'll find both a cover note there and the mandate of the committee and the work plan. And what we do is we establish in a year in advance the work plan for the committee. In the case of IREC, it's more ad hoc than some of the other committees. So you'll see there are fairly general provisions in there in terms of updates or project descriptions. But what we've done is we've matched up the work plan with the actual mandate. With that, the resolution is on the board right now, screen. If there's any questions or comments, either Meg or I would be happy to address them, but otherwise...
See Leslie's hand up.
Sure, just move. Sorry, I think Leslie's got her hand up.
Yep.
Yeah, two quick questions. I noticed that in the work plan, there's no reference to anything about the Portlands project. It's primarily Villiers and Quayside. So I was just wondering if that's not in our work plan at all.
You mean the flood protection, Leslie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes to farm. It's not an investment in real estate committee project, right, David? It goes to farm. So that's where that project falls.
So there's no more remaining items for IREC to deal with on the Portlands, the flood protection. That was just a question. I just went through it and I thought, oh, we're done with that.
It'll be reported back to the board in terms of the progress and through farm to make sure we're on time and on budget, but there's no new investment decisions.
No.
Okay, and just for clarification, under authority of the committee, 1 sub C, where there's a reference to risk management policies. I just want to understand the overlap of our responsibilities as different or the same to the finance committee's responsibility? Just if someone should just clarify for me, because I just, it says oversee the corporation's risk management policies relative to this mandate. So just as an example, I was just trying to, in my mind, understand the distinction between what we would tackle versus the finance committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a real estate deal, for example, when we were talking about Quayside, managing, the risks when we were negotiating that deal, or if there are risks that come up throughout the course of that project from a real estate perspective, we would bring it to this committee.
But it would also go to finance, right?
It would go to farm as well.
All the risks
Yeah.
sum up to farm. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But so you would seek our advice on this before going to farm, before going to the board. Is that what that means? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the risk. If it's something that we're tracking and has been reported lots of times and we're just updating, no, it just goes to farm. If there's something new that arises from a new deal or something like that, we bring those risks, and you'll see that in the Quayside report. We have a risk sheet, so we'll identify those risks, and then they would percolate up.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, Alicia.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. Andrew, you're good? Okay, perfect. So can we get a motion, if there's no further discussion, to approve the work plan? Can we get a mover? Thanks, Andrew. Leslie, seconder. All in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on. The meeting materials have a development dashboard. So this is just for information, but Meg, you're in the room. Is there anything you'd like to highlight or bring to the committee's attention on the dashboard?
No, I think we've got a lot on the agenda today, so I'll just take it as read unless there are questions.
Any questions? Anyone? Good. Okay. Thanks, Meg.
Sorry, I do have a question. Sorry, I apologize.
Yep. Okay.
In the dashboard, I noticed that the Waterfront West LRT is not in our dashboard. Is that because it's not considered one of our projects?
The West LRT? You mean? Or the East LRT?
East LRT.
So did I say West? All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's okay, Leslie. That's okay.
Yeah, we're going to build another West LRT, aren't we? No.
Yes, David, get on that. The LRT transit projects are not typically in the real estate investment and real estate committee because it would go through farm, similar to Portland's flood protection.
Okay, so it's accounted for somewhere somehow. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. That was it. That was my only question.
Thanks, Leslie. Okay, ESG. Lisa is not able to join us, but Aaron is here, who's our Director of Innovation and Sustainability, so he will answer any questions. Aaron, any highlights as well? I think there are a couple of new things that you wanted to cover there.
Yeah, thanks, Leisha. So we'll take the ESG update as read, as Leisha noted. One update we can provide is on a recent accessibility compliance audit, which is on page 2. So we had engaged MNP to assess Waterfront Toronto's compliance with AODA and IASR to identify gaps in compliance, associated risks with non-compliance, and recommendations. And overall, Waterfront Toronto fared well in the audit with a 97% compliance rate. And they noted some room for improvement on some of our website and web content. So, which I think is quite common for organizations like ours. We have content on the website dating back many years. And so we may find, and through the recommendations with MNP, some materials could be removed from the website, or otherwise we would rectify that going forward. So that's the update. Otherwise, we'll take the ESG materials as read, but happy to address any other questions that the committee has.
Alicia, if I can just jump in, Aaron's right. I mean, the review was very good. It was 97% compliance. The last part is just to review the materials on the website, as was mentioned. We have a small contract that's going through farm that farm approved to have a third party. Actually, I think it is MNP. It's going to look at the materials and advise us as to which have been on some of the materials for 20 years that no longer need to stay on, so that we're not spending money to update and make it compliant when, quite frankly, it's probably less relevant to even put it on the website. The other thing I would just point out on the accessibility side is we did strike an original accessibility advisory committee that helped us develop our guidelines for public realm, and they were very pleased that we've adopted those guidelines. We have struck another advisory committee on accessibility, and these are people who have lived experience with accessibility issues to actually monitor our projects and make sure that we're actually complying with the guidelines that we established with them. So they've been very supportive, very pleased with the engagement they've had with us. And I just wanted to thank them for their participation in getting us, quite frankly, advanced on that issue.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, George. Could you just maybe just highlight for the committee, just advisory committee members or what types of people are sitting on the committee?
Yeah, we have individuals from different groups and different disabilities. So individuals in wheelchairs, individuals with sight challenges, visibility challenges. I'm not sure if Pina, I didn't bring the list of the actual individuals, but we could.
No, that's okay. So you've taken a broad.
Yeah, it's a broad
view.
spectrum, and we make sure, and quite frankly, we use the first committee to actually help us advise on who should be on that second committee as well.
Right. Thank you. Leslie, so you have your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I've got, clearly I read all the material because I have lots of questions. So just as more of a resource, there is a group called the Accelerating Accessibility Coalition that is includes a number of land development organizations and other organizations, including the Rick Hansen Foundation. It's recently been formed. It's about 2 years old. Our organization belongs to it, but they have quite a number of resources, particularly on the development side, that they're converging. And the expertise is quite diverse in terms of disability and design. So I recommend, and I'm happy to do the introduction to that group. It would be a resource to us at the Waterfront Toronto. And then second, if not now at this meeting, but if I could spend if someone could have some time to sit with me, what's not clear in the SDG report are the metrics and how it's an inventory about what topic, how we're sort of aligning ourselves with the goals, but how are we actually measuring our progress ourselves? And how are we setting targets on the SDGs? I would like to understand how you're making that intersection.
Okay,
but we can do it if
yeah.
someone can. So you don't have to
we
explain to me,
yeah.
but someone can just reach out to me and do it at
Yeah,
another time.
Yeah, I'll have Pina deal with accessibility, and Lisa and Aaron can come back to you on the metrics.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Okay, great. Andrew, any questions? You good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just one question, one additional question for me, just on the engagement with MCFN. Is this coming back for an update to the board this cycle?
We can bring that to give an update to the board. In fact, we have a meeting with MCFN and Dream tomorrow on
We have
the
an all-day
workshop. So we can give an update on where we're at on both that, the cultural center, and other.
I actually have that in the in-camera session. I have a little update.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Any further questions, or can we move on to Villiers? Okay, looks like we're good. Kevin Green and Mira are in the room. So would you mind leading us through the information we have in our materials on Villiers Island?
Yes, sure. I'll ask Mira if you can take us through the comms update.
Sure. So we had included in the materials an updated timeline and work plan. There it is for the engagement on the density study for Villiers Island. We last went out in June of 2023, and we're getting ready to go back out again. You can see phase 1 and phase 2 are marked as complete. So we're focusing our attention on phase 3 there. We have a public update scheduled for March 26th, which is the day before our scheduled appearance at the design review panel. That's by design. We want to make sure that we're going out to the public with some information. It's a report back on the findings of the density study and the plans for changes to the built form on Villiers, or the proposed changes. We actually have 2 meetings scheduled, one virtual update on March 26th, and then an in-person follow-up with the same material, same information on May 2nd. So a virtual and an in-person to follow. And that's all leading up to a staff report that's going to Planning and Housing Committee in early May. And I'll also note on the Indigenous engagement, you'll see that arrow along the bottom. We're working with, the city had brought in a consultant to do some engagement around the work on the McCleary District precinct plan that's ramping up. And when we talked with them, we sort of agreed that to avoid consultation fatigue, because there are so many similar themes, that we would look to expand that scope and ask these consultants to reach out to Indigenous communities and urban Indigenous people around a lot of these themes that are going to be really relevant as we move forward into the next phases for work on revitalizing and developing Villiers Island. So that's where that sits. We've bundled it with the outreach around McCleary.
Okay, great.
Any questions on that?
Sorry.
Yeah.
No questions from me now.
I have a very quick question because I couldn't figure it out myself. Can you just, the proportion, maybe I'm asking this question out of, are you going to the next slides? So I'll hold, because I'll hold off, or you finish.
For now, this is the update just on the engagement piece. But I know we'll have more discussion later on, Leslie.
Yeah, no, because I was looking at the slides in the presentation in item 5, if that's what you're referring, that's where we're at. Because I wanted, all right, let me just ask my question. You can tell me if it's now's the right time or not. I was trying to calculate the open space to development ratio, like what percentage, and how is that relative to what's, say, in north of the Gardner, and in terms of the West Donlands open space, the ratio open space to development.
So I think we'll likely address that in item 5, but Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or
Okay.
Alicia.
Leslie, is your question, yeah, are you talking about Quayside, or are you thinking about Villiers?
I'm on Villiers,
Yeah.
not Quayside.
Why don't we enclose, we can get into
I think we'll get
questions.
into it in more detail.
Yeah, it was
in closed
page
session.
43. Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
yep. So we'll note that and come back to you on that. Any further questions on the project engagement and timeline for Villiers? I think there's a bit of an echo there. Hearing no further comments or questions, I think we're okay to move on unless anybody in the room has anything. Okay, hearing nothing. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin and Mira. Moving on to Quayside, we're going to hear from Meg and Carol on some Quayside project related matters.
So similarly, Carol's going to take us through the current public engagement. Carol, over to you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's been a little over a year since we started working with the Quayside Impact team on a communications and engagement plan, which really the focus of the engagement plan is to support the ultimate success of the project. So incorporating the public voice to ensure that we are delivering a community that meets their expectations as well as our goals and objectives. With the expected milestone of the rezoning application being resubmitted to the city this month, it felt like a good time to do a bit of a recap on our activities for the past year. In the lead up to submitting the development applications to the city and receiving the initial approvals for rezoning, the focus of phase 1 of our engagement plan has been on creating awareness, providing an overview of the development planning and rezoning application process, and soliciting feedback on certain application details like programming, land use, density, massing, site plan. As you can see on this slide, touch points with the public for feedback have included Waterfront Toronto's Quayside Stakeholder Advisory Committee, the open house we hosted last spring, meetings with resident associations that are in the immediate area around the development. And Quayside Impact also developed a really interesting engagement booth, which they use to pop up at different locations, both along the waterfront and in downtown throughout last summer and fall. Communications underpinning these activities have included 5 blogs, which were written by Waterfront Toronto, which introduced the development partner, talked about the climate objectives, explained the approvals process and how to get involved, and then talked about some of the high-level details that were included in the initial submission. Quayside Impact also launched a project website to provide information on the development, and they've built in some survey questions to their website that pop up so people who visit the site can provide some of their insights into what they'd like to see in this community as well. So these activities are all supplemental to the city's official process, and were really intended to support the city's community consultation last fall by creating more awareness so that people would want to get involved. I would add that what we've heard has also been considered by Waterfront Toronto as we've worked with Quayside Impact. And I would also add that there are some city staff who attend each of our stakeholder advisory committee meetings. So they directly hear from the community about what's important to them. Included with Quayside's rezoning submission will be an engagement summary report that outlines what they heard through all of these activities, including the more than 2,200 people who participated across the different opportunities. Sentiment throughout the engagement has been generally quite supportive of the project. People are most interested in housing, in particular affordable housing. They're also very interested in the public spaces, what's going to happen with the retail, and of course, the urban farm and sustainability are also areas of interest. Our next phase of engagement will be more oriented around the site plan, so we'll begin to focus more on some of the details around the community forest, programming and animation, and design. The last thing that I'll talk to is Waterfront Toronto's public realm work, which isn't typically brought to this committee. It typically goes to the farm committee. But given the dependencies between the two projects and the need for collaboration, we thought it might be helpful to include a snapshot of that project here for your information. So it's shown in green in that right-hand column. So presently the team has advanced the design of the streets and the Water's Edge Promenade to 60% design stage. Planning and design for the Parliament Plaza has been paused for the moment just so that we can coordinate with Quayside Impact on the development blocks. So we'll resume our engagement on that once that work starts progressing again. Similar to the engagement activities related to development planning, activities for public realm have included presentations and meetings with our SAC. We had a public meeting last fall, and you heard a few minutes ago about our new Accessibility Advisory Committee, and the Quayside Public Realm work was the first project that we actually brought to that committee in January, and we were really pleased to get some of their insights about how to further refine that work to ensure that it meets the needs of the constituents of that community as well. Throughout this work, we've heard support and excitement for the concept of a continuous green edge and the overall ecological approach that's being taken with the design. And then the last item I'll comment on related to public realm is Indigenous engagement, which is also underway, including a series of workshops that began in February. And we have an upcoming workshop with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation community in their community in Hagersville later this month. That is my quick update. Any questions?
Thanks, Carol. Any questions from committee members or anybody else? That was very thorough, and it's helpful to see the infrastructure and public realm piece as well. It helps piece it together. So that was very helpful. Thank you. Okay, hearing no further questions, we're going to move into closed session. Could I have a motion to go into closed session? We'll talk about items 8 through 10 of today's agenda. Leslie and Andrew, thank you. And just a reminder that any resolution considered in closed needs to be passed when we return to open. Okay, so we're back in open session. One resolution arising from the closed session for us to consider today. Could I have a motion to approve the November 16th, 2023 committee meeting closed session minutes? Could I have a mover, please? Andrew, seconder Leslie, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, moving on. I think that's it for business of the meeting. Unless there's anything else to discuss, my next ask is for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Andrew, seconder. Leslie, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, motion carried. So we will declare declare the meeting terminated, and just a huge thank you to everybody for your attendance and participation and continued support today. Thank you.